Come to order. Shh. If you need to have a conversation with somebody, please do not take it behind this wall. We can hear you better from back there. You need to go all the way outside those doors there, have your conversation, and come back in. You're welcome to sit and listen and participate, fill out a public comment card, and comment to the committee for the record. And at this time, we will start with item number 6.
Item number 6, motion Weiss Cardenas relative to the transfer of jurisdiction of 44 properties from the Department of General Services to the Department of Water and Power for $525,000 to be utilized for the capture of stormwater runoff. This item has also been referred to the Energy and Environment Committee.
Any staff here on item number 6, GSD?
Number 2, then.
Aye.
Good afternoon, Lourdes Owen from Asset Management General Services. This is a proposed transfer of 44 properties, vacant lands in Council District 5 to the Department of Water and Power. And the properties will be declared or will go through the surplus process and be declared surplus. And the proposed purchase price is $525,000. And the properties would be used exclusively for open space to capture runoff, water runoff in the area.
Now, when we own property and we deem it surplus and we're ready and willing to sell it or what have you, isn't it part of the normal process that government entities get the first shot at deciding whether or not they want to make the case to the city that they should have first right of refusal to purchase it before we put it out for general sale?
You're correct. We normally, one of our procedures is to send notification to other governmental agency. However, we have the opinion of the city attorney's office that because this is a transfer to another city department, that we do not have to go through the notification.
So we're able to do this before we even have to do that other notification of other governments? We're able to engage in this process that's before us, even before we have to give other governments an opportunity.
Correct,
Okay.
yes.
Thank you. We have no public comment cards before me on item number 6. Is anybody here for public comment on item number 6? Seeing and hearing none, public comment on item number 6 is now closed. Have any questions on item 6?
My assumption in looking at this is all this property is located in one council district, or is it citywide?
Correct. It's located in Council District 5.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so those are all the questions from the committee. We have a motion to approve the item. The item is approved. Now we'll move to item number 5.
Item number 5, GSD report relative to a resource request for $952,000 to provide services for 31 new facilities for fiscal year 2008-09 and related matters. This matter has also been referred to the Personnel and Budget and Finance Committees.
Okay, thank you. This is relative to 31 new facilities, 34 positions, but this is an item that the department is talking about needing those positions, but they are not asking for additional funding, or what's the status?
Yes, Councilman. Lisa Gabriel with General Services. We, since writing this report, we would like to amend our recommendations by deleting the first recommendation of transferring the $952,000 that's set aside in the UB to support the remaining facilities opening this fiscal year. GSD anticipates being able to absorb this cost, but we would still like to request for the 34 new authorities that we need to staff these new facilities.
Okay. Now, on a going forward basis, beyond this budget year, is the department going to be able to continue to do so as far as absorbing the cost?
The absorption of the cost was meant to be for this fiscal year only. We will be submitting a budget request for 09-10 to request for full funding for these partially funded facilities.
Okay. I do not see any public comment cards on item number 5. I'd like to go to public comment at this time before taking questions from the committee. Is there anybody here to make comment on item number 5? I do not see any public comment cards on item number 5. Anybody here for item number 5? Seeing and hearing none, public comment on item number 5 is now closed. Mr. Parks?
Let me ask how this fits into the managed hiring for this department, particularly in light of the last FSR that we're saying we're about $110 million in the deficit for the city, and it's growing. And so if you can absorb the 952 for the year, then the other issue, I think, I can't recall the number, but when we added the different costs to the department, I think you were over budget and were unable to absorb the other costs that we put in there as far as the layoffs and the cutting the budget from the beginning. So I'm just wondering if we add 40-some positions and you fill them, how does that reconcile with the other needs in the department and the other overages that we've already identified?
We've, since releasing this report, we've been working closely with the CAO's office and monitoring our different accounts. And because of the managed hiring process, our hiring plan has significantly changed. Our vacancy rate is much higher than we anticipated, and we are hiring at a much slower pace where we believe we will be able to absorb the costs of having these 34 new positions. In addition to that, we are monitoring on a monthly basis the opening dates of these facilities. Every time they're delayed by even a month, that reduces GSD's costs for supporting the facilities.
And then on the, in the sense of the list of the numbers, the 31 people, is there a list available to hire? And then what would be the expectation of the training and when these numbers would be fully deployed?
There are lists available for most of these, almost all of these positions, and the reason we are coming to committee to request for these positions now is because it takes a while for us to be able to hire the positions and ensure that they're properly trained with, let's say, the new building systems in these new facilities. So we are trying to do this a month or two ahead of time before the facilities are scheduled to open.
Okay. What I'm concerned about is realistically, if we are in November, and we give you, and I guess personnel is going to look at that in the budget committee down the road, but if you get approval to hire and you start in January, that you would probably get them hired just in the time that you'd be cutting them for next year's budget. And I'm just wondering, with that process, all that energy, have we looked that far down the line? Because if what the numbers are, if they're telling us are anywhere close to being accurate, the next 2 to 3 years are going to be significantly less revenue, which means less hiring and a variety of other things. And so I'm just wondering if we're going through a process to get people online today, and around March or April, we start sweeping accounts and getting ready for next year, and people are cutting back on the very positions that you've hired.
Our building maintenance division, for example, which most of these positions are for, has had to implement different, they've had to hire, for example, hiring hall positions. Since we haven't been able to hire all the positions, the regular positions, that is a much quicker way of being able to bring staff on board in order to start servicing the facilities. I could call on Dan Eason of our Building Maintenance Division if you want to hear more about how we're coping with the managed hiring process and how that affects our staffing of the facilities.
Are you holding vacancies elsewhere to allow for these hires?
Yes, we are. In order to achieve the salary savings that we hope to achieve to be able to hire these positions that we need for these high-priority facilities, yes.
All right. Thank you, because I think those are the issues we'll be dealing with when it comes to budget, because it's going to, from what we can tell, and I started reading some of the stuff last night, that they tell me that FSR 3 is going to be rougher than FSR 2, and we're already at 110 million deficit at this time. So, I think when we get there, we'll have to see if anything's changed. And we know your salary savings and a variety of other things in your budget, at least the last time I checked, were over in the sense of the budgeted amount, because we've imposed things on you that you did not expect, but yet they're still there. And we're going to figure out if the 972 doesn't go into this issue, it certainly would be earmarked to go somewhere, either on the issue of the managed attrition or the layoffs, or all of those programs that we've imposed on your budget. Somewhere that money's going to get used or swept very, very shortly.
Just a warning.
Yes, thank you for the warning.
You aware of that? Also, it appears that, by my numbers, the vast majority of these positions are entry-level type positions.
A majority of them are electricians, plumbers.
Also, the 952 is 6 months? That's not a 12-month amount of...
Actually, it's even less than 6 months. It's prorated exactly to what we think the opening dates of each facility is. We're counting down to the penny. If we know that a facility won't open until May, we only ask for 2 months funding, or 1 month funding, rather.
All right. As I said, managed hiring, maintenance and things of that nature. If this was a 12-month, 952,000 spread over 34 positions, that's very much beginning. But you look at somebody for only 2 months, then electrician, that makes sense at that salary rate. Okay. All right. Any more questions? Okay. So we have a motion to approve the report as amended. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's approved. We now move to item number 4.
Item number 4, continue for February 5th, 2008. General Services Department report in response to motion, Gruel Cardenas, relative to the Own a Piece of LA initiative for fiscal year 2008-09. This item has also been referred to the Budget and Finance Committee.
You're up again.
Good afternoon, Lourdes Owen from Asset Management. Own a Piece of LA is an initiative that will allow the Department of General Services to sell sliver parcels or remnant parcels to adjoining property owners. The remnant parcels are typically 5,000 square feet or less than 5,000 square feet, and are no longer required for use by the city, and they have a narrow shape and inaccessible. They can only be utilized by an adjoining property owner. And our current procedure is to offer properties to an adjoining owner and sell it with the processing of an ordinance. Each time an adjoining property owner comes to the General Services Department, we process an ordinance to sell it to them. This initiative will allow, by the adoption of an ordinance, implementing ordinance to amend the administrative code to allow the General Services General Manager to review the offer, approve the sale, and then get the respective approval from the council offices where the property is located.
And this is for remnants only, correct?
Correct. It's only for remnant parcels.
And remnants tend to be properties that, because of their size and shape, may be inconsistent with the zoning and the master plan of the area, et cetera. So the bottom line is there's various tests, as I would call them, that these properties pass in order to be truly considered remnant. So it's not like a choice piece of property on Wilshire Boulevard that everybody wants to own. That would not be subject to this process. that would be subject to the complete and total vetting process of selling it at a public sale, et cetera. This process is only for remnants.
Only for remnants and also for residential zone properties.
Remnants in residential zone
Correct.
communities. It appears that all but 10 of the 15 council districts seem to be okay with this. What is the status of the other 5 council district offices?
The remaining council offices, we eventually got the, sorry,
Eventually what?
we eventually received clearances and releases from them to sell their remnant parcels.
So you have since?
All of them we contacted, all 15 council offices,
And have they all?
after the report was written.
So on this day, because according to my notes, we have the council offices that said yes to this process are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, 10, 14, and 15. And are you telling me that 7, 9, 11, 12, and 13 are now in the same category?
We subsequently contacted the rest, and we got clearances,
From all of them?
yes.
Okay, so the matter before us is regarding the entire city, not just 2/3 of it.
Correct.
Okay, all right. So the motion before us includes all of the council districts. Okay. Is there anybody here for public comment on item number 4? If you want to buy a piece of remnant property, now is not the time to do so, but do you have any comments on this item? Okay, we're on item number 4. I do not have any public comment cards. Seeing and hearing none, public comment on item number 4 is now closed. Any more questions?
I was just wondering, do we have any idea of what type of revenue this would bring to the city if all of these are purchased?
The parcels on the list were evaluated, and we're estimating a Class C of value of 1.288 million. And once approved and it goes through full council, then we're estimating the initial revenue to be $600,000.
Over that again now?
600,000.
Class C, you're saying it would be
The
1.2?
total for the Class C for the total property, which is estimated at 217 parcels, came out to be 1.288 million. But because we're already into the first half of the fiscal year and we still need to declare them surplus, we anticipate that once it's approved by council, the implementing ordinance is approved by council to get this initiative going, we may be able to generate $600,000.
For this fiscal year?
Yes.
So you're saying the sale would be 600, we'd have more sales next year, fiscal year?
Correct.
So basically half and half, sort of. Across 2 fiscal years, about half of in this fiscal year, half in the next.
Correct. That's the estimated amount. Yes.
Okay, and that's an estimate, we understand that. Okay. Any more questions? No? No more questions, we have a motion to approve the report. The report is approved, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we are now on item number 3.
Item number 3, GSD, CLA, and CAO reports relative to proposed contracts with Clinico Incorporated and ValueNet Incorporated for the provision of spay-neuter services at Harbor, East Valley, Northeast, and West Los Angeles Animal Care Centers and related matters. This item has also been referred to the Public Safety Committee.
Okay. How you doing?
Good afternoon, council members. Linda Barth from the Department of Animal Services. We're here today to bring for your consideration 4 contracts for the operation of spay-neuter clinics at 4 of our animal care centers. The department did a request for proposal process earlier in 2008. We had responses back in May of 2008, did an evaluation process. We actually only had one fully responsive proposer, and that was ValueVet for the West Los Angeles clinic location in our new West Los Angeles Animal Care Center. But we also had a proposal from an organization, nonprofit organization, Clinico, which, although not fully responsive, because they want to focus more on public animals and only do a portion of animals adopted. In many ways, they were a very advantageous organization. They have a lot of experience, and they are really primed. In fact, they exist for the purpose of spay and neutering the maximum amount of public animals at the lowest possible cost. So they are a good match for our locations. While working with the General Services Department, what you have before you today are agreements that are a hybrid between personal services that these clinics will offer to adopted animals and other of our patrons, customers bringing their animals in. At the same time, it's essentially a license or lease for the physical spaces, which is under the control of General Services Department. So working with General Services in the City Attorney Office, the City, the Chief Legislative Analyst, and the CAO, we eventually determined that we could recommend to you, and our Board of Animal Services Commissioners also agreed to recommend to you having Clinico take over clinics at East Valley, Northeast Valley, and the Harbor area, which are areas of extreme need for low-cost spay-neuter. Even though they were not fully responsive to the RFP, there were no responsive proposals to the RFP, and because it's a very limited kind of business practice, we would not expect that there would be. So that is what you have before you today. I'm here to answer any additional questions. These are 3-year agreements with an extension for 3 years. Basically what they do is offer either a percentage of the amount of money they make, that's the arrangement with ValueVet, or in the case of Clinico, they will discount the animals, the adoptive animals, which they spay and neuter. When a person makes an adoption, they get their animals spayed and neutered at the adjacent clinic and pick them up and take them home. So that's the sort of financial arrangement, in addition to the fact that they will provide low-cost spay-neuter services to a community, which, with our new spay-neuter law, obviously we want to provide the maximum service that we can to our residents.
So today, we are considering a contract with ValueVet for one particular spay and neuter service facility, the West Los Angeles facility.
That's correct.
And then Clinico we're considering them for Harbor, which is one, East Valley, which is the second, and Northeast Valley, which is the third, so a total of 4.
That's a total of 4, council member. That leaves 2 clinics.
That was my next question. Go ahead.
Our South Los Angeles clinic, we processed and council approved a contract with the vet there in early 2007. He's been operating for more than a year there. And at 2 locations, the West Valley and the North Central location, we had no bidders, no interested parties really. We're in a new RFP process to solicit operators for those locations. And that's part of one of the recommendations before you today.
These 2 particular operators, did we have any conversations with them about why they are not interested in those other 2 facilities, or we didn't have any bidders?
Actually, we did poll all of the people who came to the proposal conference to ask them. One reason was because it does require an investment, mostly for equipment. It's not capital. The city has paid to build out these facilities, but there's a lot of equipment investment and other startup costs. So either other proposers didn't quite have the money together that quickly, or they wanted a little more time to get their proposals together. There's some physical impediments to operations at North Central. It's a very old design. It's an old clinic, so didn't really work for Clinico. West Valley is a little more challenging location in terms of it doesn't have quite the same need. It's better served by vets in that area, although we do believe both those locations will have other interested parties. We contacted some of the proposers that did not offer the last time. Again, they said they might be interested. They had more time. They had their money together now. ValueVet has also expressed an interest in maybe bidding on one of the additional 2. But at this time, they just wanted to start with West LA and get started there, rather than bid on 2 to start with.
Spay and neutering is a requirement in the city, and one of the ways in which people were able to spay and neuter animals, we were participating with mobile units. Are we still participating with mobile units today? And if we are, we have more than we did yesterday, less, or are we going down to none? What's status of the complementary to all this, which is mobile units?
The spay-neuter vans, we had a contract for one. Actually, there are 2 vans operating. One is the Sam Simon Foundation. The other is the Amanda Foundation. San Simon had a contract which they assigned to the Amanda Foundation about a year ago. That contract has since expired, and we have another RFP process for another van. In the meantime, however, the status quo is that both vans continue to operate. The funding is not tied to a contract. The funding is just tied to the use for mobile van services. So both Sam Simon and the Amanda Foundation are continuing to spay neuter. Amanda Foundation in particular has about a 3-month wait list, and we're continuing as fast as they can spay neuter. We are reimbursing them at the same as we've done for the last several years. So they're continuing at status quo. Obviously, if we could generate more revenues, more licensing revenues, so forth, we'd love to expand those programs because they take those clinics into the most needed areas. Clinico, the East Valley, Northeast Valley, and Harbor locations will also help with that. Those are underserved areas.
Okay. So the Sam Simon Foundation, we don't have a contract with them, but they provide services within our city, and if somebody has a voucher or what have you, they're honored there, or?
That's correct.
Okay. So it's done on a individual basis, not
That's
a contract.
correct.
And the other van?
The Amanda Foundation, they're continuing under the same, basically they function the way our vets function, which do the spay neuter for adopted animals now. They're in a partnership agreement with us. They agree to abide by certain regulations and bill in certain ways. They bill us for the animals. We match it up with the vouchers or the adoption numbers, and then we remit payment to them, flat fee amount.
Oh, okay. Between now and the time we get to council on this matter, I'd like you to please reconfirm the activity of the Sam Simon Foundation. They're a great organization, but I remember talking directly with them, I think about a year or a little over a year ago, and for some reason they had changed their mind about how much activity they were going to have within the city or what have you. So if you could confirm from your end what their status is, and then I'll also work with my staff
Sure.
to confirm their status today.
Yeah, they only do about 1/3 of what the Amanda Foundation does. It is true. They're much lower activity than Amanda Foundation.
Yeah, they were much more involved at one time.
Yes.
Now, when it comes to the timeline of the process where we're at today, when did we start this process of the RFP process for these facilities to contract with somebody to provide the services? When did that start?
We put the RFP out in May. In March. We had responses in May.
08?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, March of this year. We did a lot of lead time with the city attorney and the General Services Department to make sure that our RFP and our draft contract lease agreement was hammered out in advance so that we could try to keep things moving once we got into the RFP process. So we received proposals in May. We finished our evaluation in July. We went to our Board of Commissioners in August. At that time, then we engaged in this additional dialogue among the city family to determine if we could do these additional awards where we had no bids, or we had no proposals, excuse me. So we finalized the action of our Board of Commissioners in August. We went to the Municipal Facilities Committee in September, and now we're here.
Okay,
And looking forward to a forthwith approval if
Thank
so
you.
granted.
Which leads to my next question. Now, that's all the technical aspect of the process. When can we anticipate that the doors will be open facility by facility of these four?
The West LA and the Harbor facility are both looking at, say, 3 or 4 weeks once we have signed contracts to get going. We're looking at maybe approximately 2 to 3 months. In Clinico's case, they have to sort of tier their openings with a 2 to 3 month gap in between each one. So it won't be probably until late spring till the 4th, the Northeast Valley location would be opened. And those are tentative, depends on, could be faster.
Okay, so that was my next question. So Clinico let us know that they need to be able to time their openings to, I would imagine, for capacity purposes and
That's
taking on
correct.
the
Staffing.
responsibility on 3 clinics. But they could be sooner if things go well.
Could be sooner.
Okay, so they're just being honest with us about time elements,
That's
but it
correct.
could be sooner. So we could actually have the West Valley and Harbor conceivably by January 1st?
At West LA, sir, yes. Yes, by January 1st.
Now, when you said signing of contracts, I've actually seen RFP processes where everybody seemed happy and fine, then all of a sudden the lawyers can't agree on a few words, and then it takes months and months and months for the contracts to actually get signable. Any status on that when it comes to the legalese of the contracts? Their lawyers, our lawyers, agreeing that everybody's saying, as soon as the process is ready, we're ready to sign.
That's the case. In this particular case, we believe we've done a lot of work. The city attorney, our attorneys, their attorneys, we're ready to sign once
Okay.
we get the approvals.
Big difference. Okay. Okay, so they're ready to sign. Excellent. So how many of our shelters will have high-volume spay and neuter clinics?
5 of them will.
5. And potentially, in the long run,
All 7.
all 7. Okay.
That's our
But
goal.
for now, 5. Okay. So we're going back out to RFP on the, was it 1 or 2 facilities?
West Valley and North Central.
No responders. So we
No
gotta
response the first time.
retailer those RFPs, understanding the feedback that we got. Hopefully, we'll be back out with an RFP hitting the streets when?
Now,
Okay, so that, we're already in November, so
We're moving
conceivably
forward on
before
that.
January, that RFP process will already be in effect.
yes, one of the things we wanted to do was to allow maybe 75 days or something for people to propose, give them more time to get their financing together and so forth. So it will be, yeah, the end of January to receive proposals.
Excellent. My last question is, which department is going to be responsible for making sure that these providers of service actually stay on a timely track in order for us to start seeing service rendered by them?
It will be the Department of Animal Services' responsibility to manage the personal services aspect, and we will work closely with General Services
Doesn't say
because
general-
they're
'cause it's
responsible for the
facilities, So
space.
general services, if they have to bring in some equipment or something, or
They want to make
they say
changes.
this equipment needs a 220 outlet and there's none in the room, then all of a sudden we got a little snag and general services be involved in that kind of stuff,
That's
correct?
correct. And that will be our responsibility to coordinate, keep it moving.
So you'll be the lead continuously? Okay.
Yes.
You personally?
Yes, actually, it will be my unit.
Okay.
And our chief vet will be very much involved, of course, in the care quality issues.
Okay. All right. Any questions?
I just didn't get the second facility that's going to the RFP, the West Valley and
And North Central?
North Central. Okay. I would just ask one favor. Could we get someone from your department to contact my staff, get an update on the South or the 8th District Animal Shelter where we are?
The new one, yes,
New-
absolutely. Would love to give you status. It's coming along. We're keeping on a timetable with that one.
But if we could just give us, Lorenzo set something up where we can get an update on it.
You got it, absolutely.
Okay. Is there anybody here to comment on item number 3? We are talking about animal services. It usually has a lot of comment. Sure.
Councilman, can I just quickly reiterate what Linda said? You also have a CLA report before you. It's in response to a Cardenas-Alarcon motion and in conjunction with the Department of Animal Services report. We also worked with the department, GSD City Attorney's Office, and reviewed the proposed contracts, and we'd like to recommend the following. Approval of the contracts with Value Vet and Clinico. We'd like to recommend that the committee instruct the Department of Animal Services to include in all the spay-neuter contracts a provision that requires advance approval by the general managers of the Department of Animal Services as well as GSD of any alterations or modifications to the clinics. And we'd like to recommend that the committee instruct the Department of Animal Services to issue a new RFP for spay-neuter services for West Valley and North Central and provide regular status updates to the MFC. Additionally, the CAO has prepared their ED3 review, and they also recommend approval of the contracts. And at this time, the CLA would like to recommend approval of the CLA report, the CAO report, and we'd ask that you note and file the Department of Animal Services report.
Okay. Thank you. We'll make those recommendations part of the CLA report. At this time, is there anybody here to speak on this item? Seeing and hearing none, I do not have any public comment cards labeled as item number 3. Public comment is closed on item number 3. So with that, we'll note and file the report from the Department of Animal Services and approve the CLA-CAO report as amended verbally by the staff. Okay.
Councilmember, could I
Yes.
ask for forthwith?
Sure.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Okay. All right, thank you. That's approved. We now move to item... Anybody here on item number 2? I think everybody's here on item number 2. Okay. But I do have a couple cards on item number 1. We'll go to item number 2.
Item number 2, ITA report relative to the city's future cable PEG access funding and services.
Good afternoon, council members. Mark Wolf with the Information Technology Agency.
Yes, thank you. Good afternoon, council members. William Imperial with ITA, and also with me to your right is Marie McTeague of the City Attorney's Office. Thank you.
Council members, in 2006, the California State Legislature passed a new state law that took effect in 2007, and that took away the city's franchising rights. What the state law also did was cause the city to lose the right to negotiate and enforce new franchise agreements that would have permitted the city to grow and enhance its current public education and government access system. The new state law obligates cable providers to pay a new 1% PEG access gross revenue fee, but it also limits use of that fee by the city for public education and government-related capital expenses only.
Whoa, 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 whoa. For the people in the room who are here to speak on this item and who are very, very concerned about these policy matters, you need to expand on the flip side of that limitation. Does that mean that those funds are limited to, like, if you want to put some bricks and mortar together or some equipment or what have you, that sounds like we could use those funds for those purposes. But it doesn't sound like we could use those funds for somebody who might be working the camera or salaries to keep the facilities open and accessible to the public. Is that correct?
That is correct, Councilman. The new 1% fee is only to be utilized for capital expenses only. As you explained, it would be for equipment, it would be for building a building, that type of thing. It would not be permitted to be utilized for operation of a facility.
So in other words, if we spent every penny of that 1% on facilities, we would have an empty facility if we didn't figure out how to supplement that with other funds from somewhere else. And as the chairman of the Budget Committee just articulated, this city is looking at dismal numbers and cuts left and right. So we'd have to find, through probably those resources or lack thereof, the funds to go ahead and make sure that these facilities have personnel to make it accessible, make sure it's running, make sure that when we have a camera that breaks down and now we can use the 1% to fix that camera or buy a new one, we still need men and women to go ahead and do the work of identifying that situation so we can remedy it with the 1%.
That is correct, Councilman. The city's incumbent cable operators, Time Warner and Cox, they switched over to the new state franchise as of January 2008, and now the final transition will take place on January 1st of 2009, where the incumbent providers will no longer be obligated to provide the 14 public access studios throughout the city. Time Warner has stated that it will shut down operations of its 14 public and education access studios, resulting in a loss of studios and channel signals to the city as of January 1st,
Wait a minute.
2009.
Wait. Slow down. Time out. You're talking about one company closing down 14 facilities?
That is correct.
Now, hold on a second. They're closing down 14 facilities. They've had these facilities open for years?
That is correct, Councilman. As part of the previous city franchise, when the city was responsible for cable franchising, as part of the negotiations of that franchise agreement, they negotiated that the incumbent provided at no expense to the city as an in-kind service public access facilities throughout the city with a total of 14.
So it was the city of Los Angeles policymakers that actually negotiated for these private companies to have these public access facilities in where the public can come and they can actually provide content on those through those facilities and then put them on the channels, correct?
That is correct, Councilman.
Now, why are they closing down their 14 facilities? Before, they held those facilities open, and the city of Los Angeles made sure that they kept them open. Why, can't the city of Los Angeles force them to keep them open?
Unfortunately, no, Councilman. As of January 1st, 2008, the existing incumbents, Time Warner and Cox, converted over to the state franchise.
So wait a minute.
There was
wait a
a
minute.
one-year
Could the state, through their franchise process, could they have forced them to keep these open?
If the state law would have written that into the new law, then
But was the
answer is
state
yes.
precluded? Was the state precluded from requiring them to have these services available to the public?
No, they were not.
Okay, so the law didn't say that government giving out this permission can no longer negotiate this. It was the city of Los Angeles government that, in the negotiations, got them to open up these facilities and keep these 14 facilities open, correct?
That is correct.
Now, the state of California chose to give these same companies permission to continue to do business in our communities, yet at the same time, they did not ask them to keep such facilities open, even though the facilities already exist.
That is correct.
Okay, now, these companies, are they, through the state franchises, are they losing the ability to do business in any way, or are they going on to doing the same amount of business, if not more, than they did in the past?
I would say, Councilman, that they're able to do the same amount of business or more.
Okay. So when the city of Los Angeles was the entity that gave them permission to do business within our city, we convinced them that it's a good idea to create these facilities, make them accessible to the public for public access purposes. And then now that the state of California has taken that authority away from us, they took it away from us, right?
That is
and they
correct.
couched it within their lap at the state level. They chose not to give the same negotiation requirements to these same companies, even though these companies are not losing capacity. So if they had a channel yesterday, they had the same channel today for all intent and purpose.
Mm-hmm.
They want to give up a channel, that's their business. But nobody is forcing them to reduce their ability to make money, correct?
That is correct, Councilman.
Okay, go ahead.
As I mentioned, Time Warner has stated that they will shut down operations of these facilities. In terms of estimated costs, it's estimated that Time Warner and Cox have spent in the past between $6 to $8 million per year to operate and manage the current 14 public and education access facilities. Given the current economic situation and the city's budget constraints, it's highly unlikely that the city can afford to provide monetary support for 14 studios. In 2007, at the instruction of the City Council and the Mayor, the city's Board of Information Technology Commission and Municipal Access Policy Board jointly worked together with the support of ITA, holding 6 community meetings throughout Los Angeles to receive testimony from the public regarding access needs for public, education, and government access. In addition, as a result of the community meetings, they formulated a report with recommendations to the City Council that was issued on June 17th of 2008. The summary of those meetings, as well as the findings and recommendations for the city's future PEG access system by both boards jointly, which ITA supports, are contained in the report, as I mentioned, that's dated June 17th. Due to the city's severe financial constraints, BITSI and MAP-B recommended that the City Council and Mayor adopt option number 1 of their recommendations from the report for the city's PEG system. Option number 1 includes preserving 4 citywide channels as follows for the City of Los Angeles. 1 channel that would be for continuation of the government access channel, Channel 35. A second channel that would be a government access channel that would be utilized initially as an electronic bulletin board and would include additional government access programming over time. This channel would really be a placeholder that would allow the city to preserve a second channel at no cost and could be later expanded or reshaped as the city's budget improves in the future. A third channel would be used for continuation of the city's current educational access channel, Channel 36, under its existing board LACTAC. It would be designated a community and educational channel. It would also carry some public access content on the channel, as well as deliver all the content on the internet. A fourth and final channel would be implemented for higher educational content to be operated and managed at no cost to the city, with participation from the city's higher educational institutions throughout the Southland. That channel would be operated and managed by UCLA UCTV. And finally, the report recommends that ITA, in conjunction with the city attorney and CLA, explore ways to utilize sponsorship recognition, underwriting, and advertising for funding purposes to the extent permitted by state and federal law for Channel 35 and Channel 36.
How come they didn't include a third recommendation for us to see if we can find a legislator who can carry a bill and just put the world back to the way it used to be?
Well, Councilman, I think that that is an option that should continually be explored to see if the current legislation could be revised. I don't know what the likelihood is of something like that materializing in the near term, and also given the fact that this is imminent upon us as soon as January 09, there's not a lot of time before us.
Yeah, the legislature's only going to be in session one day between now and then, unless the governor has success in getting them to convene on an emergency basis on the budget. Yes?
ITA was told at the SCANATOA meeting, that's the California-Nevada Organization of Telecommunications Officers and Advisors, by Senator Levine's, Assemblyman Levine's, who was one of the co-sponsors of the bill, of the DIVCA bill, that there would be no changes entertained in the Assembly or the Senate for 2 years. There would be a moratorium. We were told that last year. We shared that with the board. We shared that with ITA. So we didn't make that recommendation. That's always something that we can put on the table if you'd like.
But Mr. Levine was not speaking to a statement of fact. He was talking about a practice that the legislative body apparently seems comfortable with. But nothing precludes a legislator from introducing a bill and trying to get that bill through, correct?
That's correct.
You know, I was a member of the legislature at one time, and I'll be honest with you, that's the first time I've ever heard a legislative member actually state on any record that the legislature was precluding itself or agreeing with itself not to take on a public policy matter as a point of fact. That seems outrageous. Each individual legislator is free to introduce whatever bill they want. That's their right, and that's their responsibility as part of the elected individual member of those bodies. It's really interesting that somebody would say that.
Councilman, if I could add also, in the report that is before you, there was also explored other options that were, the option proposed to you was a zero increase cost option. In addition to that, there were two other options that would expand the PEG access system, but both of those were not considered as far as being recommended to you because of the fact of the city's difficult financial situation. And in addition to the report recommendations, since that report has been issued, ITA has been working with Time Warner at Council's direction to also explore the option of a possible lease back of a subset of those public access facilities. So ITA is still in discussion with Time Warner on that specific issue. In conclusion, ITA recommends that this committee consider approval of the June 17th report that Bitsy and MAPB presented to the council and mayor, that in addition that ITA and CLA and CAO, with the assistance of the city attorney's office, be delegated the task of negotiating where necessary and implementing the recommendations as set forth in option 1 that I described, and report back with a status on and progress to council in 60 days. So that concludes my initial comments, and we're happy to answer any additional questions that you have.
We have quite a lot of public comment cards we'll go to in just a minute, but I do have a couple questions. First, I want to ask you, is the City of LA legally obligated by the state or federal government to carry PEG access
No, it's not.
or not?
No, federal law stated that the franchise holder may require PEG access. The state in the DIVCA law did not require that, and that's where we stand.
Okay, so nowhere in the DIVCA language would we find a requirement to carry PEG access.
Correct. What you will find is that to the extent that there is capacity for PEG channels, the new entrants have to provide similar capacity.
Capacity, but not
Correct.
content.
Correct.
Not facilities in order to create the content, et cetera, like the old days,
Right.
like the facilities we have today.
And Councilman, if I could elaborate on the city attorney's comments, therefore, it's really the city's prerogative to determine what level of PEG access it would provide. And again, when we talk about PEG access, we're talking about 3 elements: public access, educational access content, and government access content.
Okay, thank you. Now, what's the state of today relative to AB 2987?
That DIVCA is AB 2987.
But aren't there lawsuits or, I mean,
No,
there are
yes.
challenges? I mean, what's going on? Are there any dynamics flowing, or it's done?
Well, there are some aspects of the of AB 2097 that are being reviewed by SCANATOA members, including San Francisco, along with us, the City of Los Angeles, and other cities throughout the state. There are issues that we have with regard to financial reporting that we're trying to work out with some of the operators statewide. There are issues with PEG access compliance that I'll be talking about in item number 1 that I would defer to that. And so those issues are being explored by way of our speaking with other cities as to what they intend to do to seek compliance with DIVCA and federal law in some cases.
And one other area that we would like to see strengthened is the consumer services protection side, and that is an area where, as a result of the state franchise, the consumer protection actually degraded. We had stronger consumer services protection in our city franchise.
The City of LA did.
That's correct.
Okay. Also, I'd like people to note the assemblyman that was referred to saying that for 2 years there not going to be any legislation on this matter coming out of the state legislature in California. That person has been termed out. I think as of December 1st, they will no longer be a legislator. Also, the other person who was the joint author or co-author on the matter, he's termed out as well. So neither one of them will be members of the state legislature after, I think it's the 1st of July of this year. You mentioned UCTV. What is that, and what's the genesis of it? How did it come about, and who's involved in the concept that you described with the potential on one of the recommendations with UCTV?
Councilman, during the public process when the Board of Information Technology Commission was still in existence, and it had public meetings that it held to bring in during the discussion process while formulating the joint recommendations from BITSI and MAP-B, they invited in a number of different entities, from public access producers to educational institutions. And during the dialogue with the educational institutions, all of the educational institutions indicated a desire to get more of their content out. And one of the proposals that was on the table that was made by UCLA in conjunction with a university-wide network that they have throughout California, UCTV, is to establish a UCLA base station for higher education in Southern California. And through our dialogue with them, along with the other higher education institutions, we discussed a model where they would be, UCLA would have board members attend that would be representative of the higher educational institutions across the Southland, and they would make decisions in regards to direction for getting content, higher education content from all universities in the Southern California region on this higher educational channel. The motivation for, and this would again be at no cost to the city of Los Angeles, the motivation for UCLA and UCTV is that currently their content only goes out over satellite. They have no transmission through cable subscribers in the city, and they are interested in expanding their audience. So they are willing to provide the management and operations of a channel, be the purveyor of content for the other higher education institution, both private and public, and then as a result have access to a channel where they can get their content out on the cable system.
So they're motivated to get on the cable system.
That is correct.
So they're willing to be helpful to have other entities involved in creating content and disseminating content.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Is anybody here from UCLA who wants to say something about it?
Yes, I'd like to make a comment.
You're from UCLA?
No, sir,
No. If you filled out a card, I'm going to call you up. Okay. All right. Hold on. UCLA?
Good afternoon.
Yes.
Hi, I'm Allison Gang, Communications Manager for UCTV, University of California Television. And Felicia Brandon at UCLA. We, UCTV, as Mark had said, is we're actually a 24-hour satellite channel, and we air programming from all the University of California campuses. We've been around since 2000. And we are on cable in certain parts of the state, not Los Angeles, not in Los Angeles. And we're modeling this concept of the UCLA TV, UCTV, based on something that we've done successfully down in San Diego with UCSD TV. And so we have a UCSD TV channel that airs content. Down there, it's from 4 p.m. to midnight. It's local content. It's produced by the campus, but in partnership with community organizations. And also, we air content from San Diego State University, Point Loma, Nazarene, all the other universities. So it's not UCSD rah-rah station. It is a community educational channel that provides educational content that no other channel in the region offers. And it's been around, that channel's been around for 15 years. And what UCTV does is a network feed that occupies the channel from midnight to 4 p.m. So what you have is sort of a network affiliate 24-hour channel of quality content that isn't actually a PEG channel down there. It's run as a community resource. And that's the model that I think can really be achieved here.
Now, in Los Angeles, if you were to go forward with what's been recommended, having a UCTV project here, who are the players involved? Who are the entities that seem to be part of that structure?
Well, it was Cal State LA, if I'm not mistaken, was at the table. We had the community colleges and some of the other private institutions that were part of the before-mentioned public hearing that had agreed to come to the table to work with UCLA.
So these are higher education institutions?
All the higher education.
Anybody from private industry, cable companies, anybody?
No, and we hadn't got that far in the conversation. I think at this point, it's a matter of securing the channel space, and then it's going to take some effort and on the part of UCLA and UCTV to build that foundation, which we've done before down in San Diego. Mm-hmm. But the interest is there. I know the other higher ed institutions that were at that meeting were all very interested, but the one problem is none of them currently produce content. They don't have the funding to do it, and we already have it in place. And the chance for them to come and, or once the option is there, I think then the motivation to make it happen will grow.
And they all seem very encouraged to take on such a challenge as the smaller entities, because as you know, they weren't quite as adept or equipped to do take on such a challenge as the smaller institutions, and wanted and was willing and able, if you will, to work with UCLA to put together such programming. So they were all ready to move forward in that particular effort.
Okay. Thank you.
And I just wanted to share with you also a letter that I have from the Chancellor, Jean Block. So if you'd like to take a look, that we
Submit it
presented.
for the record.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
We'll now go to public comment. We have public comment cards, a lot of them. Scott Sawyer, thank you. We'll call you back up for questions later. Scott Sawyer, please come up. Leslie Dutton, apologize if I say people's names wrong. Chloe Bystrom. We have 4 microphones, so also call up Edith Shane. Edith Shane or Shine or Scott Sawyer, Leslie Dutton, Chloe Bystrom, and Edith. Looks like Edith.
Yeah, Edith.
Is it?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. You have the microphone.
All right.
We'll start on my right. Go ahead.
Oh, me
Yes.
first. Well, I'm a citizen of these great United States.
Your name again?
Edith Shane.
Okay, Edith.
And I think it's incumbent upon me to be as well informed as I can be, to be a good citizen. And I can name the publications that I read, not like some other public figures, so that I can be well informed. One of the programs that I looked at, and I like to look at public access because these people are in the community speaking about the community and the state, and I get a great deal of information from them. One of the programs that I like to look at is Full Disclosure, and I use my own judgment about what I like to hear. And I agree with the other peer groups, the other stations, the other public stations, news stations, who awarded that program 2 Emmys, so I know my judgment is good. I like to watch it. Now, I don't know if they're trying to wean us away from this program or from public access, because last night when I was looking at it, the sound would go off or down, and then it would come back up, and I can hear very well because I usually keep it at 5, and I was even turning it up to 46, and then it would shut off and it would blast and come back and forth. And I figured, there's only so much of this I can take, like any other person. I watched it again at the next half hour and it did the same thing. And so in the previous times, they've even made sounds like ee and boo. And so I don't know what the purpose of that is. But if, as a private citizen, maybe you can tell me what I can do to keep public access on, aside from going down there and working one of the cameras.
Thank you. Thank you for your testimony, and the City Council hears some of those sounds sometimes as well. Your name, please?
Leslie Dutton. I'm the producer of the Full Disclosure Network program. I regret that there's a number of very prominent people that couldn't be here today, or maybe because they didn't know about this meeting. We found out about it late Friday. But I know that Larry Flint, Ramona Ripston, even Bill Maher would like to be here to participate, because all of them are concerned about the First Amendment and the right of the public's participation, not only in the community but in our government. I've listened to the recommendations, read the report on the recommendations, that 4 channels be maintained and one of them to go to UCLA with a consortium of other content. I just can't believe that you would be shutting down 14 channels and giving one of the 4 precious channels left that you're going to consider to leave us and give it not to the community. This city is a large city and there's a lot of big problems. And the people need to be a part of solving those problems and be able to communicate with one another. By shutting down the cable channels and the studios, we are cutting off a vital portion of our community. The elderly, number one, who are not internet literate, and the poor who cannot afford computers. It's going to be at least a decade before the internet access can replace cable access. I'm here today to urge you to take whatever legislative steps need to be taken to rectify a terrible mistake that happened in Sacramento. And those two legislators that sold us down the river better never show their face again. But they're from Southern California, and I would like to know why or if the city of Los Angeles was aware of what they were doing to us, and what did you do to try to stop them from selling our rights away?
It's interesting you should ask that question. I personally went to Sacramento and spoke on the record against this bill. And also, I think the city council did a resolution opposing it as well. Many of us were very actively involved. Currently, we have some lawsuits that have erupted because of DFCA, et cetera. So there are things that we're doing, but never forget what happened in Sacramento happened on behalf of a level of government that supersedes the authority of the city of Los Angeles. We have our own charter, but at the same time, we have to abide by state law. So those are some of the dynamics that unfortunately are beyond our control.
Well, all I can say is, as people find out what's happening to us and to our rights, they're going to be very upset, and this is just the beginning.
Okay, thank you. Scott Sawyer?
Yes, hello, Councilman. The state law and legislature notwithstanding, the city must be able to somehow leverage the cable companies to preserve public access, perhaps with the threat of fees or other regulation. The citizens of this city are getting hit left and right in the wallet for trash fees, sales tax hikes, Proposition S and the like, and the cable companies could be subject to such maneuvering. And furthermore, state law is not a cover for the city to do nothing in this matter, especially since city elections are coming up. Public access producers have often been critical of city government and have done a better job reporting on city issues than the local press quite often. Their contributions are needed now more than ever with the election coming up. If this stinker of a deal stands, it's a de facto win-win for city officials and the cable companies. City officials can get rid of a few critics, and the cable companies get to relieve themselves of those bothersome public service requirements. I myself am a producer on, it's the Mark and Scott Show on Time Warner Cable, and say we're part of Zuma Dog and others, John Walsh, who presented a lot of great public information in the past years, and we thank you in advance for your efforts to preserve that.
Thank you. Chloe?
I'm Chloe Bystrom, and I'm here to plead for you. I'm happy to hear that you have been so involved in trying to protect this. I hope you will continue to do that on behalf of the City of Los Angeles. And this is the area in which there is a public forum presented that is most often not heard elsewhere. And it's my experience that we need something to offset what is the rhetoric we often hear. And I agree with my fellow speakers from before and who eloquently stated so, and I'll just leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Next, we'll have John Barron come up, Deneen Cienfuegos, and Diane Fries, and Diana Marks. John?
Hello, thank you for listening to us today. I think most of us are here to plead for the council's consideration that they keep open as many channels as possible. I understand the city's financial problems. Perhaps maintaining 14 different studios is not possible, at least not at present. Maybe something in the state law can be changed to return the situation to the way it was. But really, if that's not possible under the economic constraints of today, I would say that the city should find some little money somewhere to keep as many channels open for public access. You're providing for government channels, you're providing some educational channels in UCLA. That seems like a very good idea. They're a fine institution and can do a good job of presenting some educational programming. I don't think any of us begrudge the channels that are going to exist. but the public access seems to have disappeared in the process. There's more educational and government here, but public access, the volume of public access, really needs to be maintained. The public access shows present things in depth, more so than the evening news, more so than even the news channels. They take certain subjects, they take community leaders, people in the news, and give them a forum to present their opinions at full length. And that's very important. The public needs to be informed of what government is doing, what's happening in the city, and we need to have it available in any interim. In 2 years, maybe there's something going to change in the state, and maybe there will be some funding. But that's a long way gone down the road. What we need is some way to keep the channels open so that if public access people can produce without the studios, they still have a channel to show it on. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Deneen?
Hello. Hi, how are you? No. We're going to take our 2 minutes together. Okay.
Go ahead.
Any of us who have cable pay franchise fees, there a portion of what we pay it by default. It's been in the contract for a long time. So with
and
that
those
said,
are the fees that they're currently
A little closer to the mic.
I'm sorry. Those are currently
So
the
you're
fees.
Diane,
I'm
how do you
Diane
say your last name?
Freeze.
Okay.
And those are currently the fees that they're using to run the studios that they're running now. It's those franchise fees that we're currently paying. And all we're saying is that in such a disposable society, it would be nice if that we could use the studios that we already have in existence somehow and rent back or work out something where we didn't have to just dispose of what we're currently using and continue it, therefore, just by doing it a different way. You know, if there was a way that we can rent it or use it so the public and the communities don't have to lose what we already have.
and we pay for it to begin with. We pay for it to begin with. It goes into a general sort of fund where it takes care of the underground wiring and the transformers, that fund, and public access is part of that fund. And if we could either work out something where we are renting, or even if we kept the equipment, if they don't want to keep the studios and run the studios, don't run the studios. We want it, what's like what you were talking about, we want to be able to do it as a community to begin with. We can take the equipment to a local community and then spend that money that's there for it on...
Because they already have the broadcast capability. They already have what it takes to broadcast the productions. So if we're bringing a DVD in and we're giving this information, they have what it takes to broadcast it. We don't need to invest in buying all of this new equipment to broadcast.
Right.
Because the broadcast capability already exists.
And come January, we won't have a place to take our tapes. There won't be a physical place because they're going to shut it down. So who's going to put in our tapes?
Okay. Thank you very much. First time we've let two people make the same presentation. You did a great job. Diana?
Diana Marks, one for the record, I'm a producer for Public Access. Public Access is a forum to which all income levels can have time on their own show. They can illustrate arts, education, whatever the subject matter might be. They have a free forum. It's freedom of speech. And for instance, YouTube, you do not have the equipment, you do not have the capability of filming, there's no internships, there's no educational value on YouTube other than in the production area of television. And so YouTube is not a production area, it's just a forum to air. So YouTube should never be a part of, well, this is like public access, public speech. It is not. Whereas all levels of income can go into a studio, film what they have to say, be it politicians. Obama, President-elect Obama, was actually in the East Valley Adelphia studio years ago, and that's where he made his first public appearance on a television show for a book. He was reviewed on one of the books that he wrote. And so that's very important to keep public access open. It's inspirational, it's freedom of speech, and I believe it's a constitutional right. And if we go by, like what UCLA says, we have the money to run the studio, we have the monies, we are an organization with a lot of money. that we can keep the upkeep of the studio and things like that. I think that should be taken into consideration. This is not about money. This is about all classes of people being able to have freedom of speech. So I believe it should be allowed to continue because of the distance between how big Los Angeles is. It just should continue.
Thank you. Thank you all very much. Next, we have Shane Darrens, I think it says. Morris Griffin. Zuma Dog. Rico Cabrera. Go ahead.
Yes, I'd like to say, first of all, to tell you what public access is, why don't you be a guest on my show this Thursday
Your name
night?
again?
Shane Devins, sir.
Okay.
Shane Devins on YouTube as well. I'd like you guys on the board here to know exactly what public access is, to be my guest this Thursday night on live television in the San Fernando Valley. That'll give you an idea of what we will be losing if you as our shepherds do not help us, which we believe is a part of a class struggle in which only a monopolized, corporate-controlled mass media has a handle through the media. This should be provided for free at the public. The taxpayer and the constituents have had this in the past. They should be not taken away. Something that has been given to them, like the freedom of religion or speech, should never be taken away from the people. This is an alternative form of journalism in which the saturated, censored mass media does not offer an alternative to their point of view. This is an alternative point of view which is offered, which would not ever be seen to the mass media. And it is a constitutional right under equal rights that we would have a right to be able to express our point of view that would be non-conventional, than which corporations would not allow it to exist. Equal access is a part of what our Constitution is about. This is a class struggle, basically. I can't march in a 20th century Fox and say, give me a TV show. Let me talk about my religion. Let me talk about my political faith. That Lincoln has said the purpose of government is to do for the people what they cannot do for themselves. And I'm asking you, not only to come on my show, to know what public access is, but also to keep in mind that as our shepherds, we need this. This is something that has been given to us. It's just been given us for free in this class struggle that we're in, and we ask people that are privileged, as yourself, would continue to be gracious to give this to the people and not take it away from them. It would be like a crime of stealing to take away this genre of arts and science and culture that has been a part of Los Angeles for so many years. Be a guest on my show.
That's right.
Thank you. Yes.
To the chair, members of the committee, I'm here in favor to keep PEG access cable TV.
Your name, please?
Morris Griffin, better known as Big Money Griff, community activist and leader. Our rights and liberties are in the process of being taken away from the people because of large companies like Time Warner, AT&T, because they have lobbied, and because of the budget. Come January 1st, we got to deal with digital TV. We're forced to deal with digital TV. It's time for change. If President Barack Obama heard about this local access cable network being taken away from us, I think he would fund it in a heartbeat. Our voice, our position, our previous subjects such as religion, Proposition 8, Proposition 9, Proposition 11, rent control, if our voice is taken away, our lives will be affected forever come December 31st. Think of the future. Think of how we would deal with ballot measures and issues that deals with our daily lives. The cancellation of PEG will stop the galvanizing and mobilizing of the people around various issues. We need and want you to be our voice for the people. Here in LA, the second largest county and city in the United States of America, we need you to be our voice. We need you to show that if it's not broke, then legislate to fix it. That's what we want you to do. Legislate to fix it. And so it goes with me saying, if we don't do something now, then when? We need to have access to our cable network TVs. It's just that simple. And I would hope that you will do that for us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Right.
Rico?
Yes. Hi, Councilman. How are you?
and thank you for the committee to call this session. I have no prepared remarks other than I'll speak pretty much from the heart, from actual 17 and a half years of being a public access producer in the East LA area, and Area L, I believe it was, still is up until the end of the year. But it was basically a dream that the community had to start its own channel, or to put programming on that would be of vital interest to our own communities. We have to think about the many aspects of production, public access, who's coming on TV, what do our people see. And I think of the old Lalo Guerrero song, "Why Don't I See Any Chicanos on TV?" Okay? And we still don't, in proportionate numbers. So there's many aspects, but first of all, I want to say that we do plead with you. We do ask you to intervene on our behalf. All of the citizens that are able to watch public access, enjoy public access, strive possibly to produce their own programs and put things in the community into a different perspective. We're very underrepresented, as you know, and we want to continue to keep our voice and our vision alive. Now, for the record, I want to say that we are in a very, very unique situation, and now that we are in the Boyle Heights Technology and Youth Center, and we're trying to wrap that together with as much help as possible to see if we can continue on in some way. We lost 4 months. If there's anything we can gain back from having lost 4 months of a change, we'd like to see a transition happen, at least in Boyle Heights for East LA.
Thank you. David Hernandez.
Good afternoon. My name is David Hernandez, and my first introduction to public access was as a producer with Adelphia Cable in Van Nuys. I won't go into the legitimacy and the value of public access because that's already been articulated very well by enough people here today from different perspectives. And I want to commend you for explaining and also in your dialogue with the department representative with regards to what has taken place, what our limitations are, and where we can go. My first observation was based upon the lack of a financial impact statement being submitted and a community impact statement being submitted, given the gravity of what is about to take place and the amount of money that is already involved between Time Warner Cable and the City of Los Angeles, in excess of $25 million, and with the closure of the 14 studios, which will be increased by several million more. And the fact that 14 studios will be closed with the, if not responsibility, but the opportunity being placed with the city, surely given this financial environment, that there should be a financial impact statement with regards to the cost, if any, in operating public access studios, equipment, and staff for the public access producers. The four options given by the department do not include maintaining a network of public access studios dedicated to the producer's ability to have access, to also to have control over programming. So we need those two financial impact statement, a community impact statement, if we are to be able to move forward with a genuine plan that not only has the restrictions of the city in mind, but also the welfare of the people sitting behind me and the other public access producers. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes the public comment cards on item number 2. I need you to help me clarify something for the public. Nothing precludes, in the proposal that came forward from BITSI, nothing precludes anybody from bringing content to put it on one of these channels, does it?
No, it does not. In fact, the plan that was outlined in option 1 included the use or utilizing Channel 36 for community and education content. So the thought was that the public access content that was produced could be brought in and potentially aired on Channel 36 then.
So it really, the thing that is really a problem that we have today that we haven't figured out how to solve is the fact that people have been creating content in the facilities that have been provided by the cable companies, primarily. And there was a place, there were cameras, there were the proper equipment and the personnel necessary for somebody to schedule a taping, do the taping, and then agree that that taping would air X number of times, et cetera. So when it comes to creating the content, that's, having the facilities to create the content, that's going to be the most difficult part rolling forward. Actually being able to have content and hand it to somebody on one of these 4 channels as proposed, there's a great opportunity for people to have that content aired on one of these 4 channels, correct?
That is correct. Okay. And again, Channel 36 is the location where we were envisioning that content would get aired.
Anything else?
Yeah, the overriding concern was with, given the city's budget constraints, and I know a lot of the public, they don't want to hear that, but given the budget constraints of the city, was preserving the 4 channels that we believe that we're entitled to. It's not 22 channels, it's 4 channels. They are franchise-based, meaning that their legacy arises from our prior franchise agreements. Those will sunset in their entirety on January 1st, 2009, under DIVCA. Given these constraints, these limitations, the priority that BITSI, MAP-B, and IT agrees with is preserving those 4 channels. And this is the issue that we're facing.
So another way of putting it, these 4 channels are the channels that have been utilized by, for example, people in the room who have actually created content, and then some of them actually had regularity on providing their content to the public on these 4 channels, correct?
That's correct.
They haven't been using 7 channels in Los Angeles or 13 or 22 channels. It's been 4 channels.
It's been 4 channels, and 2 of those channels have been franchise-based.
Okay.
They're not interconnected. The Channels 35, which is a city's government channel, and Channel 36, which is LACTAC, our educational channel, are interconnected citywide. So the City Council passed an ordinance recognizing the limitations that DIVCA had passed in it in December of 2006, stating that we had 4 channels, and that's what we've declared to our cable operators and the new operators, AT&T and Verizon.
Okay, so technically speaking, we are now inheriting. The recommendation that we have before us is that we inherit and keep these 4 channels alive.
Yes.
Under our control.
That's correct.
Right?
Yes.
Now, is there a possibility that we could be challenged in the future that somebody wants 1 or more of those channels back under their control?
As long as we had 4 channels on January 1st, 2007, we continue to keep those channels unless we decide to give them up.
Okay.
And that based on that.
But if we don't create, if we don't have ongoing activity on those channels, then we could fall into a position where somebody could challenge us and say they're letting those channels go to waste. We, private industry, cable companies, for example, could try to challenge us in court and say we want that channel back because they're leaving it blank all day long. They're not even using it.
If it's fallow, meaning unused, yes.
Okay, so we have a need to want to make sure that we are earnest about utilizing these 4 channels, not just keeping them because they're ours and we don't want to give them up.
That's correct.
I just wanted to clarify, and you did partially, because I heard people say we had 14 channels, but we had 14 locations. Is that, and we used 4 channels, or how did that work?
The way that the prior franchise agreements set up these public access studios and local educational studios gave the authority, the city gave the authority to the cable operators to run these local franchise-based studios. And the signal went out only to that franchise base. I believe your council district encompasses 3 of our prior franchise agreements. So you technically could have had different residents that were viewing different public access programming at any given time. And that's the way it was set up. And though that's the confusion that comes into it. Each of those studios produced public access programming that ran in a locally franchise-based area in the city. There was a second channel in those areas that was run by the cable operators that was the educational franchise-based channel. And some of those are interconnected because the cable operators took it upon themselves to do that. And that was fine. But in terms of being channels that are citywide under DIVCA that we would consider that would be enforceable against the cable operators in case they challenged us come January 1st, 2009, and the ordinance expresses that, our DIVCA ordinance expresses that, is that we have the city is entitled to 4 channels, 4 interconnected citywide channels. And that's what we're working under.
So Councilman, to add to Mr. Imperial's comments, so again, now in today's world, as we air public access content, it would be viewed citywide versus only in a small geographic section of Los Angeles.
I just want to clarify one thing, because I've heard people say we had 14 channels, 14 locations. We had 14 locations, right?
14 public access facilities.
To create content.
That's correct.
That's correct.
14 studios.
Within those 14 studios, we had access to 4 channels. Some of them were franchised for specific locations. Others were citywide.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So I just
in
want
any
to
given franchise area, you would have access to 4 channels, or should have had access to 4 channels.
But there were
Some of
2
them
channels that took upon themselves to utilize the content that most people were talking about today.
The local content, correct.
Yeah.
So now, with January 2009,
yes,
as we move forward, the fact that these 14 studios will not be available, someone that has a cable show today could basically film that show at any place they choose to and bring the content
to channel 36.
36,
Yes.
and they then can program it to be played.
Correct.
And it would be programmed citywide.
Yes.
Versus in the past where they used to just have by the boundaries of the franchise.
Correct.
Okay. So it's a matter of these facilities that, if I understood it when I was on this committee before, that were growing old and the equipment was such that they were not getting updated by the existing franchisees. The expectation down the road was, with the technology changes, at some point that someone would be moving away from studios and buying smaller cameras, more access to a higher level technology, more convenient to the local community to make their content, but always have access to broadcast it at the city facilities or whatever facilities they are. Is that, I mean, because we talked about that 2 or 3 years ago.
You're right, and we talked about it under the old paradigm of during our franchise renewal negotiations before we were preempted to the state,
Yeah,
if you recall.
Before the state, we actually were pushing the franchisees to consider more flexibility of access for content and more flexibility of locale for access to content. And then when the state law came into play, we basically are short of studios, but certainly not short of initiative and access to equipment to create content.
That's correct.
Okay. So if I had a studio, if I had a show where I had an interview show, I could do that as well with my TV camera or whatever in my living room and bring that disc to the local station, and I'd get citywide instead of franchise-wide.
That is correct.
Okay. Now, the issue of the 1%. The 1% is basically was given to us from the state law as what, a compensation for them pulling out of the PEG arena?
Yes.
Okay. And so with that 1%, we then have more limitations on how we use the 1% than we had before.
And could have negotiated, yes.
Okay, so we had to negotiate it franchise by franchise.
Yes.
Before.
We actually were negotiating operator by operator.
Operator by operator.
Right.
So the issue now, you get 1%, but then there, by state law, there's restrictions on how the 1% can be used.
Yes.
Right. And so that then limits our ability to even consider 14 studios.
That's correct.
All right, and so the making what we have, I guess, lemonade out of lemons, we now have the ability to keep the 4 channels, make them citywide, continue on our progress to look at government, to look at community, to look at education. It's a matter of depending on those who have an interest to create the content.
That's correct.
Okay, any closing comments?
Again, we would just ask this council committee to go ahead and approve the recommendations as Mr. Wolf had indicated to you earlier, if you don't mind.
Okay. The motion before the committee is to approve the BITC MAPB report and also instruct the ITA with the assistance from City Attorney and CLA and CEO to negotiate and implement the recommendations contained in the report. And also this committee will instruct ITA to report back with an update within 45 days of this hearing. So with that, that motion's approved.
For clarification, Mr. Chair, would that be option 2 then, that the committee chooses to go with?
Option
Or
1.
Option number 1.
Option number 1?
Yeah, option 1.
Option number 1 then, for the record.
Thank you.
Thank you. With that, we now move to item number 1.
Thank you. Good afternoon again. William Imperial from the Information Technology Agency.
The committee is still in session.
ITA report relative to AT&T's provision of public educational and governmental access programming and services pursuant to the Digital Infrastructure and Video Competition Act, Public Utilities Code Sections 5800 et sec.
Thank you. Again, William Imperial from the Information Technology Agency and with Marie McTeague from the City Attorney's Office.
And Mark Wolf with ITA.
Thank you. We're reporting today in regard to AT&T's offering of PEG services. On March 30th, 2007, the California Public Utilities Commission granted AT&T a state franchise to provide video TV services in the city of Los Angeles. In December 2007, AT&T commenced operations of those services in Council Districts 3, Councilman Zine, and 12, Councilman Smith. IT estimates that AT&T currently has approximately 4,000 cable subscribers based on quarterly franchise fee payments made to the city thus far. Earlier this year, ITA, with the assistance of the City Attorney's Office, conducted an initial review of AT&T's provision of PEG access signal carriage under state law. Several deficiencies were found by ITA and the City Attorney's Office in the provision of those services. All PEG channels, and they are the following, these are the major deficiencies. All PEG channels will be carried on Channel 99. Internet Protocol scroll system will be applied to that. That is that we will not have Channel 35 on Channel 35 or Channel 36 on Channel 36. You have to access all PEG channels in the AT&T designated marketing area in Southern California through Channel 99. You have to scroll through it.
William?
Yes.
Mr. Imperial, can you answer this question for me? Is there anything inherent in AT&T's technology that does not allow them to keep those channels on Channel 35 and Channel 36 the way they're accessed today?
We're not sure. We've been trying to meet with, we have been meeting with AT&T, and they have invited us to view their system again, and we have proffered questions to them so that we can look at their architectural technology to make that determination. We have not made that determination, and in fact, you're now moving forward to what our recommendation would be, is that to allow us 30 to 45 more days to come back and report on this issue after we've completed our meetings with AT&T. They have been compliant thus far in providing certain information, and we've been in discussion. So if the committee is willing to hold this matter for 30 to 45 days, it would allow us to look at that issue, going to the whole meat of the matter, actually. Can they do it, is your question.
Because as you articulated, Councilman, the issue of compatibility and flexibility is really the issue, and we're trying to get to the bottom of that issue.
Okay. Is AT&T like a startup company? Are they like this little tiny company that maybe isn't very technology advanced? Or answer, I'm serious. Are they? Are they considered a small company, or are they considered a company that actually has quite a bit of access to being able to compete technologically with today's advances and what's going on in the industry?
They are a very extremely large company, and they are competing worldwide or nationwide. They begun rollout of this service beginning in the state of Texas, and they have...
Where are they based?
In Texas.
Their headquarters?
In Texas, in San Antonio, I believe. And they have, as they begun rollout of this, they are doing it unilaterally across the nation, so they're not per se doing this different in Los Angeles than what they're doing in
So we're
Texas.
not alone.
Right. This is being done across the nation like this. And it has been something that has been widely discussed at both a state and national level with SCAN, NATOA, and NATOA. And Williams' counterparts in those other governmental agencies have been discussing and advising their legislative bodies on this particular issue, and many of them are really trying to decide what type of steps that they're going to take next in going forward.
So right now there seems to be different interpretations. For example, the city of Los Angeles seems to have a different interpretation than AT&T does when it comes to compliance of these particular requirements.
That's correct.
Okay. Do you actually think you have as much knowledge about the actual detailed language of the legislation, state legislation and federal legislation, as perhaps AT&T does? They've got some very high-powered lawyers, and they've got some very, very involved minds who have been involved in this issue for many years. I remember when I was a legislator from 1996 to 2002, AT&T was dying to see this kind of legislation go through the state legislature in California, and they just didn't seem to get any traction. But a couple of years ago, they did. Do you think you actually know the language well enough to disagree with them? They probably know the language pretty well, don't they?
Yeah, I'll let...
The law really, it's not a model of clarity, and I think to a large extent AT&T wrote most of the law. And
Well, what did you just say?
The law is not the most clear. We believe, though, that when we read the black letter law, that our interpretation is correct. Now, they indicate that, no, they don't have to provide a similar system as what is already being provided, that if it's not feasible to do so, they don't have to. And that's all well and good. But what I think we need to test right now is the veracity of that statement. They're saying it's not feasible, so I think we need to bring in technical experts at this point to test the veracity of the representation they're making. So really it's not so much interpreting the law as it is verifying that what they're saying is factually accurate.
Like I said, they have a lot of high-powered lawyers that work for them. So getting access to that degree and that minutia, probably in and of itself, is probably going to be a challenge.
It may well be. But we're really not in a position at this point to definitively tell you that they are or are not in violation of the law without getting some more facts before us. I mean, the alternative at this point would be to recommend to you to go ahead and bring suit and
but right now it seems like
out in discovery.
The recommendation is that we'll be nice about it and then see if we can continue to dialogue and get that kind of minutia of access so that we can actually be honest with ourselves and say it sounds like they're right or it sounds like they're wrong.
Right, and that is what we're attempting to do. And AT&T has been more or less cooperative with us to this point.
And Councilman, if I could add, in addition to the channel placement issue, there are other areas where we believe that they were not in compliance with the state law. And to AT&T's credit, they have actually made progress. We have been having discussions with them for over a year now on these issues. And since that time, in our more recent discussions in the October timeframe, they've shared with us, for example, on the issue of SAP programming and closed captioning programming, that they do now have target dates in the future where they will have a solution in place to be able to provide closed caption capability and SAP. So they have been making progress, and we're, as we've indicated, we're really working through this really last issue to really understand what is or is not compatible.
Any questions? Item number 1, public comments. David Hernandez, he was here earlier, and Zuma Dog, he was here earlier. I called them forward. They don't seem to be present. So public comment on item number 1 is open. Is there anybody else here for public comment on item number 1?
I've never had my turn, but in deference to my age.
Sit down. Did you want to speak to this item?
I just want to say one thing.
On item number 1?
No item. I've spoken
Okay,
already.
I'll let you get a chance to talk in just a minute, because we're going to go to general public comment. Okay? You can stay there if you want. Yeah. Okay. So with that, we are on item number 1. Public comment is now closed on item number 1. We will have general public comment in a minute, everybody. Now, specifically to this item, public comment on item number 1 is now closed. With that, this committee will instruct ITA to report back with a status in 45 days, as they recommended. Hopefully, we'll see more progress and clarity on a meeting of the minds, and hopefully not misunderstandings, but understandings between AT&T and the City of Los Angeles. So hopefully in the 45 days we will get that clarity. With that, that concludes the items on the agenda, and the custom and practice and responsibility of the City of Los Angeles City Council is that on every committee hearing and every publicly noticed meeting, we do have general public comment. So at this time, we'll open it up for general public comment. Please state your name again.
Edith Shane.
Okay.
I just want to say that what we get on public access is not available anywhere else. That's
Okay.
all I want to say.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Doesn't hurt to be brief. You made your point. Thank you. We appreciate it. Hold on a second, sir. I'm going to call 2 people up, and I'll give you a chance to fill out a card, and you get a full 2 minutes to state your statement. Felicia Brannon? Okay. All right. And we have Allison Gang. Okay. Zuma Dog. Is there anybody else here who wanted to speak on general public comment? Okay. Fill out the card. I'll let you fill it out while you're talking. Please state your name for the record. Come forward, ma'am. Miss, yes, in the hat.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
And if
My
you
name is Patricia.
and as you're done, if you could just hand the card over to the clerk. Thank you.
I have a local cable TV show.
Your name again? I'm sorry.
My
Your
name is Patricia Kavanagh Dowsett. I've been doing local cable TV since 1994. I interview gurus from every profession, including politicians, religious gurus, guys from UCLA who are experts in law, and people from the financial world. I also interview one-man shows and people in the theater, writers and artists. And one of the great privileges of living in LA has been able to have this public access. I don't know any other city. I've never known it to happen before, because I am a citizen of the United States since the year 2000. I've been here since 1992. I found it fascinating that you allowed public access and you allowed people to express their opinion. I think it's a great disadvantage when that's taken away, though it's always been a rather mysterious process. 14 studios, finding your way around them, and now we find that there's only one real one that's going to be for the public, number 36. It seems outrageous that you're giving a whole station, one of those precious stations, to the universities. Are they paying for the privilege? All the universities take money for the service they provide. It's not public access when it's devoted solely. And are we separating church and state? Where will the church programs go? I'd appreciate a reply on either of those 2 questions.
Again, I stated the responsibility and practice of the City Council of Los Angeles on general public comment. You're commenting on items that were not based on put on the agenda, and due to the Brown Act and the rules that we follow in the city, we cannot dialogue with you on general public comment, only on items that are on the agenda. But you're
On the
here to...
agenda, you told us that you were giving UCLA one of those 4 precious stations. Doesn't that make it part of the agenda?
Yes, I don't want to get into a legal debate with you, but the opportunity to do that is when that particular item is before us. So you're here to state your statements on a general public comment, and we are listening, and it is being recorded, so please continue.
Well, there's little to add if you can't comment. It's a one-way, it's a monologue, not a dialogue.
But it's comment, ma'am.
My only comment is, why have you given UCLA, and how will you separate church and state, and how will one channel carry all these enthusiastic producers who do their one-man shows? Very diverse collection, part of the fabric of our lives in this town, an interesting fabric. How will one channel carry everybody's story? And why did UCLA have a channel? And I know the other one is government, and the other one is that we can't do anything with them, but 50% is quite enough out.
Thank you very much.
For your time.
Thank you.
I'll fill this in and send it forward.
Thank you. Next, we have a no-name individual who said unit number 36 in San Fernando. There's no name. No, excuse me, sir, but where it says name, there's no name. Where it says, let me finish. Where it says business or organization or affiliation, it says lobbyist. That's correct. There's no name there. So I can't understand writing that is not there. So sit down. If you'll just go ahead. No, I'm giving you an opportunity to speak. I will write your name for you when you state it. State your name, please.
My name is Shane Devins, sir.
How do you spell the last name?
Devins, D-E-V-I-N-S.
Thank you so much. Proceed, please.
I was advised that the budget for public access is specifically set aside, separate from government education, that it would be in the hands of the people to have the right to produce those TV shows. And there is enough money to build a TV studio. And I'll tell you, George Lucas had donated, I believe, $25 million to the UCLA in which he graduated from. So the city is not going to have any problem finding the staff to facilitate a television studio. And it would be actually something ludicrous to say that with that money you're going to just keep it in the bank or give it for stop signs or something, or people that write traffic tickets. Got to build a TV studio. People that are challenged digitally, meaning I was told not to use the words class struggle, but people that are dirt poor, they don't have a camera, they don't know how to edit, they have these facilities to help people. Also people with disabilities that are blind, that can't walk, that are deaf. They have a point of view, too, that they need to be facilitated and have been discriminated against if you just have a channel open. You need a facility to help these people and not exclude them. Under equal access in our Constitution, monopolies, the common people have a right to be able to produce a television show. They have a right to be able to do this. And no one's going to open the door at 20th Century Fox and say, come on in. You know, we're going to let you produce a show on Buddhism or on Christianity or on being whatever, on Marxist or whatever. You're not going to have a chance to have that kind of programming. Okay? So, it would be excluding people the right of free speech to say that, well, okay, we'll give you a channel. What good is a channel for someone that's handicapped? What are they going to do with it? What about somebody, and technically under the law, you can't discriminate against somebody. What about someone who's retarded that wants to do a show? You can't say to them, well, you can't do a show because you don't know how to do it. You've got to give them the means to do it. Everybody's got to have equal access. Can't be discriminated against. They got to have a facility. That money should not be goofed off for anything but building a studio until you can facilitate the staff. And you can. Absolutely you can. There's no excuse that you cannot. You can. Absolutely. And you can file, a federal judge can make this happen by filing a writ or a motion.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We have Diana Marks, Leslie Dutton, and John Barron. Am I going to do it? Please proceed. You first. State your name.
Diana Marks.
Thank you, Diana.
Right. What I'd like to say is I'm a public access producer, host, and I do my shows after listening to the meeting. I want to interject that I do my show, I do it live, simultaneously broadcasting and interacting with the community. That cannot be taped outside of the studio. That cannot be taped on a DVD camera and then put into a cassette and played because there's no interaction then with the community. So this is also why we need to keep our public access studio and the equipment intact. And also I'd like to, if I may, I would like to propose that maybe Time Warner does not now fit the city's needs with our community and what we want. We want a cable station that will provide us public access and government access at a PEG. Maybe we can decide that maybe Time Warner has now become obsolete, and we can therefore maybe get a different cable company or a different corporation to come in, if I'm conveying the message correctly to you. That if Time Warner is not fitting the city's needs and the community wants, maybe we should not do business with them if they do not want to. They don't have to do anything that they don't want to, but that doesn't mean that we should have them provide our services either. So I'd like to just put that out there, that maybe we can then maybe have a different company come in that will not cause the problems that are happening right now and will provide optimum service for our communities in Los Angeles. I was born here, raised here, and if Time Warner is doing some kind of infringement on the rights of people or whatever it is, maybe we can look for a different corporation to take over the cable station.
Thank you.
Hi, John Barron. I'd like to reflect a little bit on what Councilman Parks said. He said some people can make the video content in their own living rooms with the modern cameras that we have that maybe didn't exist 10 years ago. That's very true, and I think that's where a lot of public access, as opposed to government or education, will probably, come from. What I think the problem is here, with the budget constraints, you're saying the 14 studios cannot be supported. We can understand that, or at least I can. I know that it would be nice to have it. It would be a great option. But what I really think the problem is here is that people sense that there's not enough channels, or there's not enough space, there's not enough time for all the people who would want to present the content. I don't know if that's solvable, but I would say that that's a direction that you want to go. Rather than 4 channels, if you had 6 or 10 channels, I don't know that there's totally that much content out there, but I would suspect with the facilities that are presently available, meaning amateur cameras and stuff like that don't require full studios, the idea is if the city could somehow get more channels, get more space, get more cable time, that would be a large solution, because the people, if they could produce the content themselves, it's then getting it broadcast or over the cables. So I think that is a thing that the city should take a lead on and try to have more capacity for people. If they have to produce the shows on their own without a studio facility, that may have to be in budget times, but more capacity and fair presentation for everybody in the community for public access is where I think the city should take the lead. Thank you.
Thank you. Leslie?
When the Federal Communications Act originally created this system of public access, the concept was developed because the city's streets and power lines and whatever were going to be used, and therefore the city was given the authority to franchise with the cable companies. But with that was an agreement that the government would be provided a channel, but so should the public be provided with a channel. What we've learned today is that there are plans to give the government 2 channels and a huge educational consortium, another channel, and the public only 1. This is inequitable, and it certainly violates the spirit and the concept of the idea of public access. I would like to ask you if you could give me an idea of what the size of the budget is for Channel 35. I know that Channel 36, which we've been on since the inception of it, gets somewhere in the neighborhood of $600,000. I've heard that Channel 35 is in the millions, $5 or $6 million, and it is totally dedicated to promoting elected officials and committees, and it is totally controlled by the government. This is inequitable amount of money compared to what you're doing for the public. I think you should really consider reevaluating your priorities with regards to the budget. And at this time in our history, when we need the participation of our communities and our people, fairness should really be a factor. If you want the people's support, then you should be fair with the people. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That concludes the general public comment for this committee. All the items in this committee have now been heard, and this committee is now adjourned.